Another night was passing. Storms, wildfires, all the usual chaotic mess that seemed to go on this planet. In the morning, I touched out a fire, built a little bit of flooring. Had decided I needed to make a whole lot of stone block if I was going to have a secure little area to live in here. Didn't want to encourage any trouble. And my last setup worked amazingly well. I had this giant oversized raccoon been eating up all my crops, so I decided I was going to do something about it. Popped a couple shots off into him, and he started chasing after me. Despite me having slowed him down a bit, he was still faster than I was. I was running around the building. My dog, he didn't even take notice. And my rabbit, he seemed to be a little bit scared of the big fella. At one point, that big beast got a hold of me. Didn't really do any damage though. I'd been blasting him full of holes. Still didn't seem to be really slowing him down too much. Wasn't much I could do other than run around at that point and try and stay away from him. Meanwhile, one of my power circuits blew out. Had a fire going in my new sitting room, so I had to run on in there. Fortunately, he wasn't able to chase me, but it was darn close. So I got the fire put out. He had bashed on my door pretty good. These simple wooden doors, I certainly didn't trust them to hold up to much. My dog and my rabbit seemed completely oblivious to the fact that I was under assault by an oversized raccoon. But can't really blame them for not wanting to get involved in a fight with something several times their own size. So I messed around with that damn raccoon, running in, running out, doing my dang best. Seemed like it was going to bleed out given a little bit of time. I certainly couldn't have a mad raccoon out here trying to kill me. I had to spend some time repairing doors, and then my stupid rabbit let the thing in. This is my fault for, I suppose, letting that rabbit indoors in the first place. I should have put him down as soon as he came along. My dog started opening doors as well, which was frustrating. The lightning kept starting fires. Fortunately, it was raining, and that big raccoon killed that rabbit, which at this point I was fine with, since the rabbit had gone out of his way to try and get me killed. I was shooting like crazy, trying to keep this thing wounded, put him down, and my door wasn't going to take much more abuse. That's for certain. Sadly, I had to give up the door and get on out of there before that big bugger got in there and got a hold of me. A couple more shots. I set the running right past the dead rabbit, through the cook room. There was blood everywhere from that beast. He sure was wounded pretty heavily. I really blasted him everywhere. He was going to take out another one of my doors. Just a matter of minutes. Cold temperatures in my freezer didn't seem to be bothering him too much. Also, the fact that the power wasn't working terribly well at the time didn't help. And my dog got the bright idea to go around opening the doors. I almost got involved. I thought the beast was going to go after the dog, but he didn't. I did encourage him to smash down the door, and then I started laying on into him. Finally, down he went. That was a lot of effort, but this guy should provide me a significant amount of meat. Just remember not to mess with the oversized raccoons. You might get half your base smashed and your rabbit killed. He did make a fair amount of meat. Along with what came from that rabbit, I'd be set up nicely for a little while. Fair amount of leather as well from that big guy. I was thinking about making myself a nice soft sitting chair. At the minute though, there's a whole lot of potato to plant. Based on my power struggles, I decided some batteries were in order. Every once in a while the wind stops, so do all my lights and refrigeration. Sadly, I was going to need some more steel. So I worked on the potatoes, stopped to eat meals periodically, worked on potatoes. At that point, caravan showed up. All kinds of people, mean looking cats with them. I just focused on getting my potatoes done, and then I was off to bed. I could hear them out there milling around, but I decided I'd rest for a while. In the end, they didn't really have a whole lot. I sold them the gold that I'd scrounged up. They had some crazy bionics, even things beyond bionics that I didn't understand. But the fact of the matter is, I wouldn't be able to install them in myself. So in the end, I just sold them the gold, and that was that. While sleeping, some cargo pods came down, a bunch of cloth. That'll prove useful if I need more clothes, want to make another chair or something out of that. So I headed out to grab that stuff. All the way across country I had to run. But it was nice to be outside, and I was able to take it all in one trip. When I got back, I decided to lay around as that caravan nearly walked over my head. A little cloud watching's what a guy needs. And then I built my stone cutting bench. Decided to set to work on that before too long. I was going to need a whole slew of them if I was going to make my home secure with a nice proper stone fence. Before that, if I was going to make more pemmican though, I needed some vegetables and fruits. So I set to chopping down all the fruit trees I could find that were harvestable, pulling that in for myself. Of course, once again, the power was out for the most part. And that was a little frustrating. So I couldn't work on any more pemmican at the minute. But the fresh fruit would keep me going for a while. There sure was a lot of fresh fruit around here, so a fella couldn't complain too much. Again, due to the lack of wind, there just wasn't any power around. There was still some expansion to do in my sitting room and my freezer. If I was going to make these batteries though, I was going to need some more components. I'd found some nearby. Decided I'd run over there and do some mining on that. And carrying them things on back, I was feeling alright for the minute. Seemed like a fine day. Seemed like a fine time to go to bed as well. All this running around, carrying stuff, sure does get a guy tired. I didn't have much time to eat before I went to bed. And the last time I ate before that, I wasn't able to find a table. That always makes me crabby. Come morning, I had a big old bushel of cherries to eat. Did a little bit of mining and a little bit of cleaning. All of a sudden it got colder out than I was used to as well. I don't think it'd be as bad as where I lived before though. Those dirty old robots, they can have that cold. Anybody that wants to show up over there and mess with them. Next plan, get enough steel to make some batteries together. So I mined and I mined. I was getting slightly better at mining. I wasn't learning too fast though. My plants started dying off due to the cold, which was really unfortunate. Fortunately though, there was all kinds of fruit around, so I thought I'd be alright. I got one of the batteries made. I decided to lay down and do a little bit of stargazing, being that it was that time of the day, and a guy just needs a little time to himself sometimes. After that, I finished my second battery, and then I went to bed. looking forward to the fact that my power should be a little more stable from here on out. In the morning, I ate the last of the pemmican that I had on hand, but with the batteries and the wind blowing a bit, yeah, I was able to make a bunch more, so I set right to cooking. After cooking for a spell, I just did some sitting around, wishing I had some smoke leaf. Even a little tobacco would be nice, but beggars can't be choosers here. After I got some food together, security was definitely going to be my main priority. But for the day, I was tuckered out again. All my potatoes had died. While sleeping, a girl Sarah contacted me saying she was being chased. I decided to give her a break. Despite the hard snow, she showed up smiling. She seemed like an alright chap, but she did seem like she'd like to get into some drug use. Sadly, she wasn't carrying anything with her she could share to improve my mood here. The guy gets bored by himself, so I was happy to have her show up. She wanted to get right to work. I didn't really let her. Combito was a fellow what was chasing after her. Again, he seemed like he'd be a pretty good fighter. Wasn't the fastest, being that he was clomping around on a wooden foot. Didn't really seem to have the gear to keep him warm. Wasn't wearing any pants even. I decided helping Sarah out wouldn't be all bad. Whatever this guy is doing to her, I'm sure he wouldn't deserve to be around much longer. So I grabbed my gun. I ran on outside. I told Sarah just to run around, distract him. I'd give him the business. And she was happy to oblige. Only problem with this gun, it doesn't have much of a range. Sure does shoot like the Dickens though. Not the most accurate piece either, but it's what I have. So she ran around. I shot him full of holes. And eventually down he went. I let her take his club so she wouldn't be totally defenseless should somebody want to chase her. Now, this fella wasn't a pirate. And once again, all the bad stuff I'd done had been weighing on my conscience. So I decided to see if I could nurse him back to health and set him loose. Maybe turning this leaf would help my luck improve overall. So she took the club, and I took him. She decided she was so happy for me helping her out that she left me a nice button-down shirt. It was in decent shape. And then after that, I gave her the bad news. She had to leave and couldn't come back. Once again, I was sad to see her go. Guy does get lonely, but I did have Combito over here to spend some time with. Even though he wasn't too happy with me, considering I'd shot him 20 or 30 times. He was grunting, grimacing as I tried to fix up his wounds for him. And it did take a right long time to get it all done. Turns out, that fella had been shot many a time. I told him, what do you expect, man? You can't be running around being a jerk to people. He claimed there'd been an item. He'd caught her cheating, chased her for miles and miles. I asked him if it was all worth it, and at this point he said no. So I got him all tended up. So some cargo pods came crashing down. A little bit of some weird cloth-like material, which I'm not going to complain about. Seems like it might be useful at some point. I'm still working on expanding my sitting room. Decided to run out and grab that devil strand stuff. At least that's what Combito called it. Gave him some meals. Decided to do a little bit of cloud watching once again. Wasn't a lot for recreation here. Turns out tossing horseshoes wasn't as exciting as it used to be. But I'd get back into it at some point. Unfortunately, Combito did not get any type of infection, despite me leaving him in a bunch of his own nasty old blood. At some point, he'd be able to leave, and it was going to be pretty soon. At the moment, he was asleep. You can't right wake a guy up and haul him out, throw him out in the wilderness. So I went to bed myself. While sleeping, one of my windmills broke down, but the other was blasting like nobody's business. I didn't have the components I needed to repair that windmill, so I had to get back to mining. Before that, I sent Combito on his way. He's a good fella. Hopefully he changed his ways as I've changed mine. So I mined out my components. The dog was helping me. A good old Hamlet. Haul those things in. Didn't get as many as I would have liked to out of it. But I got something, and that'd be enough to fix that windmill. So I did that. I was trying to stay focused on finishing out my rooms. That's what I did. It's getting darn near being done with it. I want to sat down to have a nice rest. Might have been a long, weird couple days. Sitting down makes a guy feel good, just as much as accomplishing some good hard work does. At that point, it had warmed up a touch. I'd learned to think about mining over the last couple days, so that was good. I decided me and Hamlet were such good buddies that just made me feel good. Gave me a nice little warm feeling as I was having my pemmican the next morning and trying to get all these potato plants replanted, which didn't take too long now that there wasn't a bunch of other plants right in the way. Back to mining after that. I decided to nab some of that steel before heading off to train Hamlet a bit. It's nice having him help out around here, so I'd like to stay on top of that. And with that, I'd done all the mining I needed to do in my freezer. And it was time for a meal before finishing off all the mining to make my sitting room nice big sized. After that, the floors went in. That was much needed and made a huge improvement. My next priority needed to be getting some nice walls up. After making blocks for a spell, I was right back to tossing horseshoes. And then it was off to bed. A typical evening routine. Chill out and have some fun. Get some rest. Pemmican was disappearing fast, but I tried to stay focused on getting some blocks made. So I worked on blocks. I also did some mining periodically. Mostly because a little backup steel wouldn't hurt. Someone came crashing down out of the sky at that point. She seemed like a real cocky smart jerk. Given that I had changed my ways, I decided I was going to try and rescue her, nurse her back to health, send her on her way. It did feel good not to be killing people. So I planned a little spot for her. And then I ran down there to see if I could scoop her up. She's gonna not be happy with me, which people never seem to be happy with me here on this planet. But it is what it is. Down I went. On my way there, she had gotten up and walked right off. Best case scenario. But nearby where she'd been, I did notice there was a whole bunch of nice fruit just right for the plucking. So I ran on down there and got to harvesting those things. So after that, I chopped all them plants down, carried it all back home, got back to the business of putting stuff away where it properly belonged. It was time to make a little pemmican at that point. My food stocks are running low. So I cooked and I cooked. And while cooking, sharp buzzing started in my ear. That did not make me too happy, but I pushed on through my cooking task regardless. occasionally doing a little cleaning, trying to avoid more sickness. While cooking, some of them pirates, a jagged dragon, showed up. A fella named Kiyoshi. Wasn't much of a shooter, but he did have a gun. He's just shouting insults, shooting his gun off into the air, making a bunch of racket, pretty much acting like a real jerk. And it was at that point I decided I was going to run over there and deal with him. I've had enough of these pirates. Turns out, traveling far, far away from my original home wasn't enough to keep these jerks away from me. So I snuck up on him as he was milling about, doing God knows what, really. He started shooting at me, and I started shooting at him, and we both had taken some cover. I was the better shot, although my gun was not as accurate as what he was shooting. Felt like it took forever for one of us to actually draw blood, but I did manage to hit him. Caught him in the leg. Didn't slow him down much. He just kept on shooting back and forth for what seemed like an hour, maybe more. He was yelling, cursing, popping off rounds like nobody's business. He never really had any luck in hitting me though, for which I was grateful. Meanwhile, he was bleeding pretty well. My mood was suffering. I wasn't enjoying standing out here shooting this poor schmuck, but down he went. I decided to take his gun, even though it wasn't any better than what I was already holding. Before doing that, though, I sure was hungry. Some of that pemmican tasted mighty good at that point. I was sad that I had to drop another one of these fools, but it is a necessity when dealing with pirates. On that note, I laid down to go to bed for the night, just as some visitors showed up, bringing some stuff to trade as well. Couldn't be all bad. A bunch of happy people milling around. It was nice to have somebody to talk to, hang out with. They were simple tribes people, but I don't mind that at all. I sold them the shirt, some of the other stuff I'd gathered around here, that auto pistol I'd taken off Kiyoshi. I had some wake up. I decided I'd probably keep that. I debated on buying a couple joints off him, but that price seemed pretty steep. So I let it go at that. Then I decided to take a walk around, hang out with them for a few more minutes before they left. And I just contemplated my solitude as I ate a little pemmican and then got back to cooking pemmican. My little house was starting to look pretty nice all in all. I had plenty of space for storage, for sitting. The stove was nice. It was a clean little room for the most part. The dog liked to track mud through there. And I didn't stay on top of it as I should in terms of being cleanly. But I cooked all day, and then it was off to bed. About that time, that buzzing in my ear stopped, and that made me feel significantly more pleasant. A good night's sleep was in order. There was a lightning strike in the middle of the night. Crazy. Right nearby, started my potato patch on fire. Shook my whole house. Scared the bejesus out of me and the dog. I had to run out there and put the fire out. Despite the rain, I didn't want anything else bad happening to my potatoes, since it had been a cold snap and a giant raccoon had come along, taking them out a couple times already. And after that, I decided my home area needed to be cleaned up. Sure was getting messy in here. And once that cleaning was done, it was right back to cooking. My dog nuzzled me while I was sitting down enjoying a few minutes of solitude, and that sure does make a guy feel good. Hamlet is such a good boy. I'm happy to have gotten him. Happy to have been able to train him up, keep him safe and happy. He seems to really like it here. So I cleaned and I cooked. And there was blood from that giant raccoon all over the darn place. It seemed like I just couldn't get rid of it. At that point I decided to make a little prison area. I don't like them all sitting in my personal space. So nice little area to keep people while I'm nurturing them back to health, even though they hate my guts. Seems in order. Got a little normal bed. Wasn't anything super be proud of, but it wasn't anything bad either. With that set up, there was a bear attacking a hare. Ate the whole thing too, right next to the base. And I got back to making blocks, being that I was still going to need some serious defense around this little area if I was going to have a hope of survival. A few blocks down, I was off to bed. For the most part, I was feeling well. I just missed having somebody around, despite having sent so many people away. When fires were raging in the distance, I had planned out some wall areas. I was going to need a whole lot of block and a whole lot of steel if I was going to get them done. But I started working on them regardless. I spent a whole lot of time working on those walls. During that time, I learned a thing or two about building stuff. Turns out the more you do it, the better you get. As I worked on that, meteor crashed down. Jade it was. Fires were raging all around, but the rain was taking care of that for me. I just focused on clearing out plants and getting my walls built before it was time to have a little fun, toss some horseshoes around. My potatoes were about half grown. And there were a whole lot of trees that needed to come down in the south area. Also, I was pretty short on blocks if I was going to get these walls built. So I focused on those things, switching back and forth so I didn't get too bored. Making blocks, getting them put up as walls, and eventually it was time to head off to sleep for the night. Next morning, it's time for a good meal before getting back to work. There was blocks to be made, walls to be built. I decided I was just going to focus on making blocks for quite a while. And that's what I did for a good chunk of the day. It was a lot of work. I sweated pretty good. Periodically, have myself a nice meal. Taking a little time to throw some horseshoes as well. It's important to have a little fun to maintain sanity. Before bed, I did a little more block chopping. That way I'd be a little better set off for tomorrow. That night, a fella fell right out of the sky. Crash landed near me. He wasn't the type to do any work on his own. Fancied himself a boss. Seemed like a pretty fella, a little too well manicured for my tastes. But since I'm trying to turn a new leaf, I decided I'd try and rescue him. He was bleeding pretty good, and he wasn't anywhere close to me. But I ran out, despite the wildfires burning like crazy, smoke, heat. Dragged him back to the base. Fortunately, I'd made that little prison for him. He did need some tending straight away, else he wouldn't have made it. So I got to that, got him patched up. He's already ordering me around. While doing that, I heard a crazy squirrel chittering, screeching around. I had to run outside and deal with that squirrel. Didn't take much though. Squirrels aren't much of a match. Proper firearm. I did shoot up my windmill a little bit. Had to get to fixing that as well. All that makes a man hungry. So I had a little bit of food. And was back to bed, being that I'd been up all night taking care of that fella. Next time I woke up, it was mid-afternoon. He was hungry, needed some food, and that squirrel was going to make a little more meat for me, so I butchered him up. Then it was time to get back to making blocks. That stayed my focus, other than eating, normal day-to-day stuff. Finally, my walls were getting put in. I had a slew of block built up. I was feeling alright when I sat down, chill out for a little while. And I was hanging out room. One of these days I'll clean up all the blood on the floor. And it was time for bed once again. These are hard days' work. Early in the morning I got up, decided to go straight to work building walls, dealing with my current prisoner. It was weird to think that I'm in charge of somebody else's life. But I am, so I'll do my best. I worked on my walls. At that point, I heard that fella moving around. He was able to walk again, so I cut him loose. C'est la vie, my friend. At that point, I got sick. My pemmican, it made me ill. That sure was going to slow me down. I was doing my best to work on the wall. Carter passed by. He gave me a wave. He was thankful. I at least took him in. Got him healed up. I was dropping blocks off to get my wall made. I was sketchy about it, but it was all I had to eat. So I had some more pemmican. Well, it sure wasn't moving too fast at this point. Building was slow, walking was slow, occasionally stopping to barf. I worked so long, I had to eat myself some pemmican right outside. While doing so, another transport pod crashed down. A little heavy lady named Sky fell out of the sky. She wasn't too good looking, but she seemed like a bold sort. Didn't seem like she was gonna die on her own. But I'd committed to this path. So once I'd finished my pemmican, rather than going to bed, I decided to run out there, see if I could rescue her. It was going to be a rather long trek, especially in my current state of food poisoning illness. But I started working on it. I got next to that creepy old building, and I got a real bad vibe. Before I even got there, she stood up. Looked like she tended herself. And then she got to walking off, which is best case scenario as far as I'm concerned. So at that point, as the sun was coming up, I'd been up all night. Tired as it gets and hungry. Not to mention sick from the food poisoning. I ran back home as fast as I could. I went to bed just as an eclipse set in. My hours were all screwed up now. I'd stayed up too late. My power wasn't holding. But by morning, late morning, roughly noon in fact, I was over the food poisoning, feeling 10 times better. I had myself a little more pemmican. And then I sat down to chill out for a couple minutes before getting back to work on my walls. Yet another mad squirrel came running in, thinking he was going to get a piece of me. I don't know what's going on around here. The squirrels are getting into something bad. So I grabbed a gun and got ready to deal with the little bugger. It's a sad situation. He got pretty close. Closer than I would have liked, in fact, because he ended up getting a hold of me. In the end, I decided I had to start kicking the dang thing dead. Down he went. And not before give me a couple scratches on my foot. I got myself tended up, went right back to working on my wall. And then it occurred to me I could butcher that squirrel, have a little extra meat laying around. I didn't have any vegetables, fruit, so I couldn't make any more pemmican at the minute. And then it was off to bed again. A good night's rest. Maybe my foot would heal up from that dirty old squirrel. Around about 3 a.m., I got a little stir crazy. Went to work on my wall. And then I decided I think I'd rather sleep in that cave than this nice room I had. So I switched my bed out. Started sleeping in the cave. Somehow then improved my happiness level. I was pondering that while taking a walk around. Things were really starting to come together here. My power sure wasn't doing very well. As I was working on the wall, I was pondering that fact. Seemed to me my wind turbines were blocked pretty well. That was something that was going to have to be dealt with sooner rather than later. So after working on the wall a bit, I decided to get my wind turbines freed up. Turns out my temporary quick-built walls were blocking one of them, and a bunch of trees are blocking the other. There's a real amateur job going on here. If I was going to make it through this, my survival skills were going to certainly have to improve. Once I got all that squared away though, the wind was about as dead as it could get, as you would imagine. But nothing I could do but give it some time, get back to work on the walls. So that's about what I did. Now I was running short on the block I was using, but I had plenty of granite block to make up the difference. So I replanned a little bit, and then I went off to bed. It wasn't going to be long. I'd have these walls up, do a little mining in my bedroom, make it bigger. I was feeling pretty good that night. Forgot to let Hamlet sleep by me. I called him in there, and he came right in, and another night's rest was had.